1/3 of the world population live in a country with insufficient income tax to fund a UBI. Our work has shown that VAT funding is the only option for these countries. With the base UBI needing to be raised to cover price increases caused by the VAT funding, the poor worldwide are better off. 20% more of the rest of us are net advantaged when funding from VAT instead of the best income tax model. The MyUBI website has proven that 97% of people are better off on a VAT-funded UBI, and if you have your country's income distribution tables, you will see a similar result for your people. The following was a paper produced and presented for the Freiburg University in Germany. It puts the numbers into the Euro-Dividend. The common market in the EU itself are the complications in a worldwide VAT-funded UBI. A wide variance of VAT rates in Europe would bring increasing cross-border shopping, damaging to the home country's VAT income funding the UBI. It would create further trade imbalances and badly affect poorer member nations. The Union requires a continuation of alignment of these rates. Here are the member states, including the UK's GDP per person. A 30% rise in VAT rates pays for this UBI in each nation, as well as a high income tax exemption. Here is the average earnings and the UBI percentage of average earnings. EU citizens would be receiving about 40% of the average income across the Union. Someone on the average earnings would get a personal tax reduction of this amount in each country. Given the UBI and tax refunds, someone on the average income in each nation would have a VAT spending break-even of this amount. If you spend this amount on VAT goods in a year, the VAT tax would equal the tax refund and the UBI amount received. This spending is about double the average income and would have to be solely on VAT goods for you to be worse off. A higher income would get a higher tax reduction and therefore a higher VAT spending break-even point. With no VAT on rent, interest or savings, it was people earning in excess of $160,000 spending above the VAT break-even, resulting from a $100,000 income tax exemption here in New Zealand. Given a similar income distribution with New Zealand, this is the expected earnings break-even in the EU. The lowest being in Bulgaria is €30,500. With an average earning of €7,000, not many are expected to be worse off there. 96% of people earn under the break-even of €101,000 in the UK. An increase in pensions of €3,200 per year is allowed to cover increase in the cost of living from the VAT rise for our pensioners. When setting this 30% VAT rise, the measure we looked at was Bulgaria's ability to afford the set level of UBI and a moderate income tax reduction. The difference between the cost of living and the financial situation of each nation are expressed in the UBI amount and here in the income tax reduction afforded. Having no income tax in neighbouring countries would make it difficult for Bulgaria to retain skilled workers and placing them in a disadvantage within the EU, in the same way as having a much higher VAT rate would. What is being said here is that supporting the EU by maintaining an alignment of VAT rates means richer countries would have a surplus of funds above what is needed to afford the UBI in their country. I've expressed that surplus as a percentage of income tax earnings to be able to clearly state what is affordable for income tax reductions in each country. With an income tax reduction target of 70% in New Zealand, a percentage of over 100 means the country will have a surplus of funds in normal trading conditions and be able to refine or remove many other taxes, much like Denmark has. Maybe infrastructure, health or the environment budgets could be increased. Make life better for people somehow. Ideally, a high tax exemption will be set in each nation with just the top tax rates being retained. This universal entitlement Facebook post explains the situation. Briefly, a carbon tax and dividend raises the petrol price at the pump and shares the funds equally to the people. Added to your UBI, it is free to administer and it directs people spending their UBI to the green alternative. This averaged €475 yearly, but hasn't been included in the numbers shown. The people's votes direct the spending of the World Environment Fund, which has been fully described with the Global Challenges Foundation. These measures, or ones like them, are needed to afford a UBI in every nation in the world, thanks for the effort of Paul Harnett and World Basic Income. A financial transaction tax would mean a donation from New Zealand of $1 billion a year. Applied worldwide, this would enable every country in the world to afford a $7 per week and a $3 child UBI. Directly delivered into people's accounts by the UN Global Wealth Fund, forwarded thanks to the efforts of Hilda, the writing team, and the BN executive. Other versions of this post for different countries are on the site. Just scroll down to find them. Currently, this post, which applies to Canada, Australia and New Zealand, has a link to a letter to the Finance Minister in every nation of the world. The plan is to have another link to the EU UBI referendum and getting this post sponsored through Facebook. The current rules within the EU set a cap of VAT rates which needs to be 30% higher than it currently is. Due to new information, the versions for the EU nations on the site need to be updated. If you think that the text would read better in your own language, please email me a translation of a small amount of text on the post. If you think it's best, please volunteer. We need this referendum to succeed. The planned sponsorship places this post in front of an uninformed public, which is what we need to do. A volunteer is needed to keep the conversation on track and answer questions for every version of the post, especially if not in English. Some friendly supportive posts early on would also be helpful. I've extrapolated India's VAT funding results to countries from the Philippines to Burundi, based on GDP per capita. A 50% VAT rate increase in these countries affords this UBI and child UBI weekly. This gives a yearly UBI in this percentage of average earnings. People will have this VAT break-even and earnings break-even. The UN objective for every person to get $7 per week and a child UBI of $3 would require $79.5 billion to assist these countries from Burundi to Lesotho. A donation of 1% of the world's basic income adds to $210 billion and can afford a UBI of $12 per week with a child UBI of $5.20 for these nations. Truly transformational. These countries are extrapolated from the New Zealand's results, again by GDP per capita. A 39% VAT rate affords this UBI and a 70% reduction in income tax for these countries. The tax reduction again is the actual current tax on the average earnings in each country, The earnings break-even is calculated from New Zealand's average earnings result. A similar income distribution gives a break-even of between double to 4 times higher than the average income. An income tax exemption means no one pays tax on their earnings up to the exemption, so everyone is better off until their VAT spending is recorded. Mostly you have to earn enough to be able to spend enough to be worse off. These countries require these VAT rates to support or afford this UBI, and the same 70% income tax reduction, aside from the EU nations, which have already been discussed. You will see that the European nations' results are similar to the other models. Bulgaria has a higher UBI than Turkey, but could only afford an income tax reduction of 38% with a lower VAT rate. Romania has a similar result to New Caledonia, with virtually the same GDP per capita. The European countries here with a lower VAT requirement and a higher income tax reduction should be celebrating their membership in the common market. South Korea affords a UBI from a 34% VAT rate rise, and from Canada down, the higher GDP per capita reduces the VAT rate required until we have Monaco at 9%. Western Europe has a comparable UBI amount and VAT rate with Hong Kong, but are higher tax exemptions afforded in normal trading conditions. Understandable with Europe getting the lion's share of world tourism and having the common market. Some might say that this will take years to agree and to organise. I think we could do this worldwide in months. Here are the steps required. Create an international UBI card and distribute worldwide, or do it nationally but with a world coordination. For the rest of us, a mobile phone app and an online account. Pay the suggested weekly UBI fortnightly or monthly. Raise the VAT rate suggested worldwide in every nation. Instigate a high carbon tax and dividend worldwide. Incorporate the People's Controlled World Environment Fund. The world vote of 1% UBI and 10% carbon dividend donations could be done through your UBI account itself. The UN Global Wealth Fund would be distributing money from Burundi to Lesotho, given that they've allowed direct access to their accounts. So either $28 or $48 monthly, depending on funding. In year 2, with increasing African VAT contributions from the spending of people's UBI, smaller funding would be required each year, enabling a wider level of support. Assist countries from Myanmar to Ghana to afford $48 monthly, with emphasis placed on countries with VAT on food. Each country reviews their fund balances, calculating and initiating income tax exemptions. This is in the 2nd year. Pay out any fund surplus as tax refunds to the lowest earners. In the following years, the UBI and income tax exemptions are in place and the UBI funding is afforded. We will have ended world hunger and the deprivations of poverty while encouraging employment worldwide. Thank you very much for listening.